being with us today, and as I share with you in the next hour on 5 reasons why SharePoint 2010 will revolutionize your organization. I thought of picking this word revolutionize because it's kind of working for Apple, you know, how Steve Jobs uses words like magical, inspiring, awesome, so I'm going to start using those words. Anyway, kidding aside, my name is Dux Raymond Sy, and I'm with Innovative E. We're an organization based out of Washington, D.C. and Atlanta, Georgia. We pride ourselves in being able to help businesses and large organizations to really reap the benefits of SharePoint. So what are we going to do today? In this 1-hour interactive webcast, what we're going to see, what we're going to learn is we're going to see how SharePoint 2010 is very beneficial to any organization. Certainly, we only have so much time, so I can't go through every single feature there is in SharePoint 2010. In fact, if you're looking forward to that, there's a lot of great SharePoint 2010 events this week. Just go online and do a search on SharePoint 2010 launch, because tomorrow is the official launch of SharePoint 2010, and you'll find a lot of great resources. But certainly, what I want to focus on in this hour is, at the end of the day, what does it mean to your organization? What does it mean to your business? We're going to talk about organizational pain points that SharePoint 2010 can address out of the box. And I'll go through a lot of examples, from simple examples, day-to-day activities that we do in our businesses, to rather complex situations we have to deal with, things like compliance, things like complex applications. So I'll talk about that, and we'll see how 2010 is quite beneficial for that. We'll also talk about 2010 features that can improve organizational collaboration and document management. And certainly, I know a lot of you joining us today might already have SharePoint in the with the previous version, 2007, or you just have Windows SharePoint Services 3. We'll look at some of the changes in 2010, but more importantly, for those who's never seen SharePoint before or just thinking of going to SharePoint, again, you'll see a lot of great things what this platform can provide. We'll also talk about how you can deliver organizational transparency with better and timely reporting. You see, a lot of us think of SharePoint as this document management collaboration tool, but actually it's so much more. SharePoint, if you want to think about it, SharePoint is like it's like a clay. It's everything, it's nothing, it's something. At the end of the day, it addresses a lot of the collaborative needs, but that may vary. It may be around document management, it may be about reporting, it may be around collaborating through complex systems. So we'll get to see all that, but we'll also talk about how you provide organizational transparency. And we'll talk about how you efficiently collaborate with relevant people in your organization with the vast enhancement in its social computing capabilities. Formal background, my name is Dux Raymond Sy, or Sy, depending on who I talk to. It's all good. Feel free to call me Dux. I'm a managing partner with Innovative E. I wrote the book, SharePoint for Project Management, for O'Reilly Media. Now, for those who purchased this book, certainly this book is teaching you how you can take advantage of SharePoint in the project management world using the current version of SharePoint, 2007. But I want to tell you, great news. Just last Monday, I've confirmed that I'll be working on an update for this for SharePoint 2010. So just stay tuned about the details. For more information, if you want to connect with me, talk to me, feel free to drop me an email. There's my email. There's my Twitter handle, my LinkedIn, and even my blog. I encourage you to check out my blog regularly. I write a lot about SharePoint, a lot about project management, and just really how you reap the business benefits of SharePoint in various kinds of organization. Okay? So with that being said, let's go at it. So this whole session, I really want to talk about and look at this whole idea of a revolution. A revolution not in a negative sense. It's not like we're going to topple the institution here, but really looking at a revolution on how we do business, how we collaborate in our business environments, how we manage information. And this is the best time in history that we should start jumping ship and change our ways and take advantage of a great technology like SharePoint. So to kind of put things in perspective, okay, oops. Don't you love it? Don't you love it when you get a meeting invite with 20 massive attachments? You know what I'm talking about. You get a meeting invite, 20 massive attachments, and it's inviting like 10 other people. You go to the meeting. After the meeting, there's action items, right? And then these action items fly back and forth like there's no tomorrow via email with all these other attachments, and you still get it, even has nothing to do with you. Don't you love that? And, you know, you get tired of that. Suddenly you create a rule that will go to your junk mail folder, but when the real information that's relevant to you comes in, you don't see it because it goes to your junk mail because you're, you know, disappointed and frustrated with all these massive emails flying back and forth. What about, don't you love it when you triumphantly win the game at work called Who Saved the File Last in the Network Share Wins? Isn't that brilliant? Where, you know, you might be working on a proposal here in the East Coast. You might have a colleague out in the West Coast, and then you're working on some important artifact, important document. You didn't know the other person was working on it, and then you overwrite each other. What do? Right? Well, maybe you call IT to pull the backup up, but again, you have to jump through hoops to deal with it. And what's even more interesting is a lot of times these network shares, it tests your memory skills because you have to remember that that file has to be saved in location 18 folders deep. I know a lot of you are laughing now, but it's so true. Don't you love it when you ask IT to build some system, you know, nothing complex. Let's say suddenly you just acquired a bunch of different companies. There's a lot of growth in the organization, and your job now is to inventory all the equipment for these various companies that that you purchase or your company purchased. Well, the thing is, you're not IT. You're some kind of operations manager, inventory manager, and you ask IT, hey, IT, can you build a system where we can put in all the equipment of all these other companies? What happens? Well, not to bash IT, but IT's always strapped of resources, and depending on how important you are or how not important you are, IT might get it done or it might not, and almost always it comes in when it's too late. IT is so slammed these days that you're so careful when you make such requests, right? You're thinking, you know, why bother? I asked for something, and if I say the wrong thing, what would IT say? No access for you. Next. So what I'm trying to paint here, the picture I'm trying to paint here is this is the reality we live in, friends. But it doesn't have to be. You know, it's time for a revolution. Down with the institution. The days of email, network share, collaboration, that's so old school. That's long gone. I'm not saying you junk your email or network shares, but come on, we could do better. I mean, we're in 2010. Everybody has an iPhone. I know a lot of you just bought an iPad. You have GPS in your car. You have like a digital video recorder that records 24 because you can't miss Jack Bauer, and then we're still using email to collaborate. Power to the people. The days of relying on IT solely on even doing simple things that's technical should be way behind us. And again, nothing against IT. IT can focus more on the heavy lifting, whereas we, the business, the users, we should be able to take care of ourselves and address all the needs we have, and a lot of it are technical, without relying on IT. Now, that's where SharePoint comes in. You see, I won't go through into the long-winded definition of what SharePoint is or what 2010 is. You can go and look at that definition. But really, what SharePoint is, a one-line description, definition of SharePoint, specifically this current version, 2010, that's coming out, or officially launching. SharePoint 2010 is a collaboration platform for the enterprise and the web. Now, that's very, very important. It says platform. And what a platform means is, again, it's like clay. It can be a reporting tool for one person, but it can be a document management tool for another person. It could be a conference room scheduling tool for a third person. It addresses and enhances organizational collaboration needs around document management, reporting, content management, records management, and even addressing compliance needs. And the powerful, the very compelling piece that SharePoint provides, it's the idea of empowerment. A lot of the things that SharePoint can do and SharePoint provides is not rocket science. I mean, a lot of the other technology can certainly do it. However, the sticking point, the differentiator with SharePoint, is it's the idea of empowerment, where users are empowered to build their own solutions, which I'll show you a bunch of them in a while. The technical barrier to entry is rather low. Certainly there's requirements, there's things that you should know. However, with proper background, and you'll see how low the technical requirements are, pretty much we as the business, we as the users in the organization can be empowered to build these solutions that we need, okay? Now that I've discussed why we need this revolution to happen, now that I've discussed that, we can't be stuck in this collaboration rut that we're in, relying on email, network shares, and relying on IT to do everything for us, I want to tell you 5 reasons why SharePoint will revolutionize your organization. And certainly for this discussion, I'm going to look at SharePoint 2010. If you have questions later about 2007 or prior versions, I'd be happy to address it. But all the examples I'm going to show you are mostly around SharePoint 2010. Okay? Now, number one. The number one reason why it's going to revolutionize your organization, because SharePoint 2010 empowers individuals. Users can build their own solutions without IT intervention. And a lot of times the solutions that users need are not that complex. Solutions like project sites or dashboards. By the way, let me share a secret with everybody. If you guys want to get promoted at work, use that word, dashboard. Right? When you meet your boss, you say dashboard, you get promoted. No, just kidding. But you can build that as a user. You can automate workflows. Now, what do I mean by workflow automation? Workflow is a business process. It could be as simple as automating expense reimbursement. Today, a lot of organizations, the way they do their expense reimbursement is someone goes to the network share, fill up that Word document called expense reimbursement, and then email it to your manager. It works. But sometimes, what if your manager is out on vacation? He or she comes back with 1,000 emails, drops the ball on your expense reimbursement request, and then you don't get it right away. What about it's all automated? If you can, some system can ping your manager on a regular basis. You could do it. You could build it yourself. And the beauty of this is, if you're thinking, well, Dux, sounds complex. I don't think I could do this. No. SharePoint builds on your existing skill set, meaning as long as you're familiar with Office, with Windows, and web concepts, heck, if you update your Facebook status, you are a great candidate already. So what I want to show you is a couple of examples, and I want to run through scenarios. Now, I'm going to give you simple scenarios because later I'll show you some more complex examples here. So at this point, everybody should be seeing my screen. If it looks funny, I'm running what's called a virtual machine. I'm running Windows inside my Mac environment. And so you see Windows. So here's an example I'm going to talk to you about. So what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you a day in the life of a project manager, for example. Now, let's say I'm a project manager, and I've been trained on SharePoint, and let's see. One of the things I need, as always, as a project manager, is a repository where I can store all project-related information. It could be documents, it could be communications, it could be meeting minutes, it could be a lot of different things. So notice what I'm showing you right now. This is SharePoint 2010. And this is out of the box, meaning I didn't customize anything. If you install SharePoint 2010, this is what you see. So just wanted to show you, okay, I'm a project manager. I've been trained on the basics of SharePoint. It's how I can take advantage of it as a project manager. And by the way, I don't know programming. I can't build websites, but I know how to use SharePoint 2010. So all I do is go to our SharePoint 2010 implementation, and I want to create a new site for my project, because this is where I'm going to store all the project-related information. I've just been assigned to manage the, let's say, the opening of a coffee shop somewhere, or opening of a store somewhere, all right? So as you can see, the interface is very different than what we're used to in the previous version of SharePoint. What you're seeing here is actually Silverlight in action. And let's say I'm just going to pick one of the available templates, and I'm going to call this a site. This is what's called a team site template. The template that we're looking at is kind of like templates in Office. You know, in Office you have Word, you have brochure templates in Word or fax templates. Same idea. So I'm going to say this is the project site. Let's say NYC Cafe project. Okay, so that's my project. I'm going to call it NYC and hit create. So the process of creation, I just go ahead and do it through this visual interface. And like I said, no programming necessary. And what's happening is behind the scenes, SharePoint 2010 is picking up that template, putting all the necessary components, and building this project site for me. And in addition, what we'll see in a while is, voila, there it is. This is the site. Now, if you're thinking, well, Dux, I don't like how it looks, you know, I want to change different colors and whatnot, certainly you could do that. And let me quickly do that for you. So let's say I want to change, one second. Clicked on the wrong button here. So let's say I want to change the font here. I just say, welcome to our project site. Okay. So I'm going to say edit. All right, and notice what you see is what you get interface. Now, by the way, some of you are thinking out there, well, Dux, you're using IE. I don't think you could do this in other browsers. Hold on, I'm going to show this to you later, but SharePoint 2010 is cross-browser compatible. They got rid of ActiveX. They're using industry standard technologies like JavaScript and Ajax. So I'm going to welcome to your NYC project site. All right. So as you can see, I was able to edit it directly on the page, and as you can look at the toolbar, it's very different than SharePoint 2007 because now all the tools are consistent with other Microsoft products such as Office. We're using the ribbon interface, which is quite brilliant. So now let me just save it and notice that the information was stored and was saved. It was straightforward. I'm empowered. I could do it myself. I don't have to call up IT and say, hey, IT, can you create this project site for me? So being a project manager, schedule is important. So one of the things, thank you, Carrie. I see Carrie's comment. Sweet. It's sweet indeed. So one of the things that's important for me is creating schedules or meetings. So let me go ahead and create a new meeting. And again, forgive me, this installation, what happened here? All right. Let me try this one more time here. Oh, that's all right. I'm just wondering why that is. But anyway, so let me try something else. So I was going to show you, I was going to enter a meeting entry, but that's fine. In fact, instead of working on it here, let me hit this button instead. Somebody was asking what version I'm using as a demo. I'm using RC1. RC1's release candidate 1. And I've installed it on a remote server. So that's what I'm doing. But one of the things that a lot of people don't realize with SharePoint, regardless if it's 2010 or the prior version, notice how it's deep integration with Office tools. So like the calendar here, I can say connect to Outlook. And if I hit allow, it's going to fire up my copy of Microsoft Outlook. It's going to say, are you sure you want to do this? Yep. So as I do that, notice that I have my own calendar. Let me hide my own calendar. And I have a SharePoint calendar here. This is one other SharePoint site. And then I have another calendar called the NYC Cafe project. So what's going on here is I have Outlook now connected to that SharePoint site. Now, how many products out there can you connect your Outlook to a calendar in a website? And somebody's asking, what version of Outlook is this? This is Outlook 2010. This is Outlook 2010. But you can certainly do this with Outlook 2007 as well. So let me go ahead and enter a calendar entry. So let's say SP 2010 launch. All right. Location, NYC. Okay. I think it's right around 10/8. I don't know. I'll just make that up. Save. So notice what I'm doing here. I'm entering calendar information, all right? I'm entering calendar information in my copy of Outlook. Let me make sure I hit refresh here. And the idea is, in this central repository, I'm able to take the information and make it available on the site. Now, given what I'm doing here is not specific to SharePoint 2010, but the point I'm trying to make here is the integration between Office and SharePoint is still there, but more importantly, there's added benefits, there's added features between SharePoint 2010 and Office 2010, and certainly there's a lot of resources out there where you can look up what the additional features here. But at the end of the day, what benefit do I get? It'll refresh in a while, but let me go back to our screen here. The key benefit that I'm showing you or I'm talking about here is the idea that individuals are empowered. It reduces the bottleneck on IT where if we need to build some kind of solution, if we need to build some kind of system, we don't have to rely on IT. And me as a user, I can certainly do it on my own without any programming or without any high-level complexity. As you saw, that was straightforward. And more importantly, it builds on my existing skill set, my existing tools. I love Outlook. That's my personal command center. I'm not going to give that up. So what SharePoint 2010 can do is it extends what Outlook can do for me. Instead of emailing everybody about our meetings, or even if I invite them through Outlook, but that's still not visible in the central repository like in a project website, it's still not doing me any good. Whereas this one, any meeting entry on the project site's calendar, boom, it shows up in my calendar in Outlook, and it does the same thing for other people. Okay. Now, number two. Before I go to number two, keep in mind all these capabilities, all these power. With great power comes great responsibility for the organization. I'm not advocating here that you just install SharePoint and let it loose, meaning, okay, I'm IT, let me install SharePoint 2010, I'm going to mass email everybody and say, go and use it. To take advantage or to reap the benefits of SharePoint, the first thing you got to do is you got to prioritize the business needs. Because SharePoint, like I said, is everything, is nothing, is something. What are you trying to do with SharePoint as an organization? Are you addressing collaboration issues? Are you addressing reporting challenges? Are you addressing system integration challenges? You got to prioritize it. And there are resources out there you can look at. I put little links there so you can learn more about that. What about having an organizational SharePoint roadmap? You see, SharePoint is a platform, which means that when you're committed to SharePoint, it's like getting married. You're in it for life. There's different phases, so to speak. You might find that humorous or not humorous, depending how you look at it. But rolling out SharePoint is not just like installing Word on people's machine. It's so much more than that. So you should have some kind of organizational roadmap based on your priorities, what you're going to do with SharePoint. What problems are you going to address on a phase-by-phase basis? So read that article too. I talk more about that. And then proper planning is very important. I can't stress that enough. Again, I guess that's a project manager in me, but it's very, very important. I've seen a lot of SharePoint deployments that people just do it, you know. What do you mean planning, Dux? Real technologists don't plan. We just pop the CD in and install it through the organization. Yeah. Remember, SharePoint is a tool. It's meant to solve a problem. But if you don't sit down and plan, identify the problem, it's a useless tool, right? So you got to plan properly. I have a article on that, on how you can plan for 2010 migration if you already have SharePoint environments today or even not. Lastly, you have to specify your adoption strategy. It has to be clearly specified. Training is one piece, certainly, but there's a lot of other dynamics around training or a lot around user adoption. So check that out. So that's the first thing. It empowers users, that it certainly can revolutionize how users work, how users do their job on a day-to-day basis. Number two, it delivers relevant information. If rolled out correctly, you can better organize information. So let's say, especially today, I mean, we do a lot of stuff now in organizations. We work with documents, we go to meetings, we work with charts, reports, just a lot of stuff. Now, again, a lot of us are still in that paradigm of folders and shares. But the problem is, either we forget where things are, and B, we can't look at that set of information another way. Now, if you're wondering what I'm talking about here, here's a good example. I know a lot of you out there, you guys have iPods, right? How do you guys organize music? You don't organize music with folders. You organize it with playlists. So a song, for example, like SharePoint is nice, nice, baby. I heard that's on top of the charts now. Yeah, check that out. Go to YouTube. SharePoint is nice, nice, baby. But so let's say you have that song. It could be grouped based on 80s music or 90s music. It could be grouped based on party music. It could be but it's still that one song. So there's different ways of looking at it or organizing it. Well, that's something that's so great with SharePoint 2010. It has more features now on allowing you to manage keywords, allows you to tag content more relevantly, and there's this whole idea of folksonomy. Folksonomy is unstructured type of taxonomy where you can define how you want to organize your own information. And the tie that binds all this together is its enhanced social computing. I have a screenshot there. I'm not sure if it's big enough for you, but once you get the slides, you see it. But with SharePoint 2010, it's new My Sites capability. In fact, you don't even see the word My Sites. It has a lot of different capabilities for a user. Think of it as like the Facebook for the enterprise. Now, it's interesting when people hear the word Facebook, they think, oh, it's something we do outside of work. But a lot of the things that Facebook as a technology can do, think about it, is now available in SharePoint 2010. So, for example, if I go to my profile, that's what it's called in SharePoint 2010, I can look at information I've tagged. If you look at the lower left section, I have a section there that says I like it. Tags and notes. What you can do is you can go to any page, any site, any type of content in SharePoint and say, I like this, I like this. Or you can click on tags and notes and put keywords on it. All that information is now aggregated, is now stored in your My Profile. So it's kind of like your Facebook-like site or page in SharePoint 2010. So that's one. Another thing is, now listen carefully, the social computing aspect of SharePoint 2010 is just really, really powerful. It could look at your organization and through usage, through the people you work with, through the department you're in, it can make recommendations and say things like, hey, you know your colleague Jay up in Calgary, Canada, is working on this project. He just worked on this file. And you're working on something similar. Maybe it's related. Isn't that brilliant? I mean, if you work in a large organization and there's commonalities across the organization, which you might not even know of because this person is in the other part of the world or different department, different business unit, this My Site through My Networks, My Profile, can see that for you. There's a lot of great demos around this online, so just look up SharePoint 2010 social computing. But that's really exciting. So that is indeed revolutionary because today, let's admit it, there's a lot of silos in organizations. And what I mean by silos is the same set of data might be in 10,000 different places. How much time and effort and resources do we waste just to look for it or to figure out which one's the real deal or figure out who has it? So that capability in SharePoint 2010 certainly allows it to deliver relevant information to the relevant people. Number three, a reason why SharePoint can revolutionize your organization because it has capabilities that supports compliance requirements. And what I mean by compliance, forgive me for our friends in different parts of the world, I'm not familiar with compliance in different parts of the world, so a lot of the stuff I put here is US-based. It provides solutions for industry-specific compliance, things like Sarbanes-Oxley, SOX, HIPAA. It's a healthcare compliance here in the U.S. ERA, American Reinvestment Recovery Act. That's part of the federal stimulus. In fact, the screenshot you're looking at, I'll bring it up in a while. I see a bunch of questions there. I'll get to that. But ERA is part of the federal stimulus Act of the United States, and one of the requirements is you have to report on how you're spending the money. So as an example, let me share my screen with you, and I want to show you an example on how SharePoint is addressing reporting needs. So everybody should see my screen, and let me bring up this site. Okay, so what I'm showing you is public. This is the DC Department of Transportation ERA Stimulus Project Reporting site. Now, just to let you know, this site is actually built in the private version of SharePoint, but the concept I'm sharing with you is applicable to SharePoint 2010 as well, and I suspect one of these days we'll be upgrading. So here's the idea. Based on the American Reinvestment Recovery Act, the requirement is if you're an agency, got the stimulus funds, you have to report on you're spending the money. Now, let's see, I got all these emails coming. And as the general public, you can come in here and see how the money's being spent. You can look at all the projects being funded by this stimulus fund. So if I click on a specific project, so let me click on that, what it does is it takes you to that specific project, and that project is its own site. It's its own website. It has all the information about the project. You know, project information, a picture, a little map there. It shows you all the detailed tasks, when the project was planned, when it was actually finished, and a comparison between the budget versus spent. Now, this is all available for the public. Now, listen, this is really, really important. The beauty of SharePoint, which I haven't really talked about yet, is it delivers relevant information to the relevant people. An aspect of that is we're looking at this as the public. Notice that meetings and documents, nothing shows up because we're not supposed to see that or work with that. However, if, let's say, a project manager signs in, the relevant information shows up based on who that person is. It's quite brilliant. And if I log in and I'm one of the people assigned to do these tasks, the field will open up for me to update when I actually finish. So as you can see, SharePoint can support this type of need. And if you're thinking, well, Dux, why SharePoint? Well, a lot of the tools are already in SharePoint. And in this project, for example, with the time constraint that we had, we were able to roll it out much faster compared to other technologies. And with the budget they had, we were able to roll it out much more at a cost saving. So it supports a lot of compliance requirements. And there's that other requirement, the Run DMC requirement. No, I'm just kidding. That's a joke. So just trying to make sure if you guys know that. Okay? Anyway, if you want to read more about this transparency solution that supports ERA, there's that link right there. You can certainly look at it. So number 4. Okay, I want to make sure I go through all of this because I want to spend some time answering a lot of the questions. So I'm getting a lot of the questions here. Interoperability. The good news is, and I've said this earlier already, SharePoint 2010 is cross-browser compatible. It's adopted the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, the WCAG 2.0 standard, and check this out. It means it's going to work in browsers other than IE. Okay, it's going to work in browsers other than IE. So if you don't believe me, let me fire up my Safari here, and I want to show this to you. A lot of your questions will be addressed by this demo. So, guys, what I'm showing you here is SharePoint 2010, and notice I am in my native Mac environment. So I can go to the same tools I did or I worked with earlier in IE, and I can say things like edit. Okay. So when I click on edit, wow, check this out. Welcome to your SP, or let's say your department site. See, I'm doing this directly in Safari. And this is something I can't even dream of doing in the previous version of SharePoint. This is really, really powerful. And certainly you can do this in Chrome. You can do this in Firefox as well. So it's using Ajax, and it's really taking advantage of industry standard technologies. Okay. Now, if you're interested to learn more, I wrote a whole article. A lot of you were asking about that. I wrote a whole article on how you maximize 2010 on a Mac, iPhone, iPod, or even iPad. So I show screencasts of using SharePoint 2010 in these different tools. And you'll see it's seamless, in fact. And then I talk more about it in the screencast. So go and look at that. Another aspect of being interoperable is there's various authentication mechanisms. A lot of people would tell me and have this misunderstanding that SharePoint is so proprietary because you got to have a Windows account to use it. Well, not true. Partly true, I should say. Yeah, you can have a Windows account, but even if you don't, it's fine because SharePoint works with other technologies or other authentication standards out there. So, for example, you can use OpenID authentication to log into SharePoint. And what's OpenID, Dux? Well, you can use Google, MSN, Yahoo account to log into SharePoint environments. That's the OpenID consortium. In fact, I think O'Reilly website is using that. Or you can use the O authentication, another industry standard for authentication. Twitter. Let's say if you have a Twitter account, that's part of the O authentication. So you can configure it. You can configure SharePoint 2010 to use that as an authentication mechanism. There's a lot of different authentication models. There's that. If you look it up, there's this thing called claims-based authentication, another cool thing with 2010. So long and short of it, SharePoint 2010 is much, much more interoperable compared to the prior version. Again, I would say it's the most open source Microsoft product out there. And it uses standard data interchange. Some folks were wondering, well, Dux, does that mean I have to move all our organizational stuff to SharePoint? No. I mean, you can keep existing information in their current repositories if you'd like. Let's say you have SAP systems, you've got reporting tools like Crystal Reports, or you're using existing web services, XML files. You can still use all those because you can use SharePoint to interact with them. And I say interact, it's not just only display the data. You can use SharePoint as a front end, for example, or as a one-stop shop where you pull together various data sources and make it available in SharePoint and have the users interact with it. Wouldn't it be great if SharePoint is a one-stop shop where your user doesn't have to go to System A to do this, System B to do that, System C to do the other thing, right? What you could do is you can take all those systems, make it interact with SharePoint, and to the user, it's a single interface. It's like going to Costco. Just go to one place, you get everything. For our friends abroad, you might not know what Costco is. This massive place where you buy everything. But anyway, so it uses industry standard tools. And the great thing with SharePoint 2010, it has newer technologies that makes it easier. Things like your BCS, Business Connectivity Services, your external content type, external lists. So really, really amazing stuff. Okay. Some folks are asking, can you build sites offline? Does it sync when you finally connect? Absolutely. It's not really building sites offline, but once you have a site created in SharePoint 2010, you can take the content, the information offline with a new tool called SharePoint Workspace. And so let's say you're updating some information in SharePoint, you got to catch that flight. You can disconnect, quote unquote, or work offline, and then once you connect back to the environment, SharePoint Workspace will re-engage with your SharePoint site and synchronize the information. If there's a conflict, it'll let you know, hey, there's a conflict. Which one would you want to take or not take? Okay, okay, so very, very interoperable, and you can look at a bunch of information out there. In fact, one of the most amazing things I've seen is there's somebody, I'll have to pull up the blog post, but somebody used SharePoint 2010, they're connected it to a PHP script that's using a MySQL background. You talk about interoperable, right? So very powerful. Number 5, the 5th reason why SharePoint 2010 will revolutionize your organization, because at the end of the day, it's all about the Benjamins. A little slang here, I guess, or idiomatic expression here in the United States, but it's all about the dollars and cents. Some of you might be thinking, well, Dux, what are you talking about? I mean, you got to pay money to buy SharePoint, right? And I know the hardware requirements are higher now. You have to have 64-bit. Windows has to be 64-bit. I got to buy license for SharePoint 2010. Well, hold on. Think about this. How much are you currently spending on disparate systems? You've got, I'm not going to name products, there's a lot of them out there, but I see in a lot of organizations they have one set of content management system, another set of document management system, reporting tools, collaboration tools. They have internal wikis. They've got, their file shares. So you've got all these different systems, a lot of them different products. So the first question is, how much are you paying for those separately? When I say paying, I'm not even talking about the software license nor the user license. What about training? What about backing it up, restoring it? What about making information available across these systems? I've seen organizations where information is in some content management system. They had to write a special program to make it talk to the document management system, to the reporting tools. How much are you spending to do that, right? And what's the cost, okay? So that's, you can measure all that with dollars and cents. But what about things that are not quantifiable but very important? What's the cost of user frustration over multiple tools? Where I've seen organizations where users have the same, has to enter the same set of data in like 10 different places. Oh, I got to put in this project meeting in this website. Now I got to update my Outlook. Now I got to enter it in this Excel spreadsheet. Now I got to put it in the most powerful database out there called Access. Or I got to put it in this other system. So what's the cost of that? What's the cost of management not finding what they need? I want to circle back to my first example. Don't you love it when you get a meeting invite with a bunch of attachments, action items slide back and forth with a bunch of attachments? What's going to happen 3 weeks from now? Your boss walks up to you and says, hey, Dux, I need that report. I need to find out what that report looked like at 9 o'clock 2 weeks ago and who worked on it, etc. And for some reason you can't find it. You search your inbox, you search a network share, you call IT. What's the cost of that? What's the cost of relevant information not available when needed? And we get into that situation a lot, especially today. Why am I saying all this? Well, because all these pain points, all these money we're spending, well, SharePoint can make it easier for you. Because A, going back to the first point, SharePoint 2010 is a platform that can provide various solutions. And these solutions certainly can talk to each other. Second, it's a Microsoft-based tool. And as you saw quickly earlier, not only you can interact with it from the web browser, users who are so used to Office-based products can interact with it as well. I could work all day long in Outlook and interact with SharePoint if I wanted to. I could do that with Excel. I could do that with Microsoft Project. I have a screencast out there, how you synchronize Project 2010 and SharePoint 2010 out of the box. You don't need third-party tools. You don't need Project Server. So very, very compelling. So with that being said, hopefully from an organizational level, I was able to show you 5 reasons why SharePoint 2010 is such a revolutionary product, and more importantly, how it can help, it can address a lot of the business needs in your organization. So I want to open the floor up on the time that we have remaining here to questions. I see a lot of questions, so I'm going to go through these questions here. Now, by the way, before I forget, because time might just fly by, I would appreciate any feedback you can provide about this session or any, if you've seen me before. There's the link at the bottom, meetdux.com feedback, and this is the first time I'm doing this. If you provide feedback by the end of midnight tonight, I'm going to take all those names and do a raffle, and I'll give you a free SharePoint 2010 training course worth $2,500, okay? So with that being said, let's see. Let me go through these questions here. Hey, Catherine, are you there?
Yes, Dux, here I am. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure we're
sorry, I was moving things around. The questions are over here. Do you want me to read them to you, or?
Oh, no, I see it now. Okay, let me go through it and read it. Sid had a question. Can one create their own template for reuse by others? Absolutely. And in fact, Sid, you can do this in private version of SharePoint as well. But in SharePoint 2010 is much, much more powerful. So let me talk about that quickly. In the prior version of SharePoint, you can create your template. So template like a project management site template, or a social meeting template, or a requirements gathering site template. So you can write that, and you could do that in prior version of SharePoint. But what's brilliant about SharePoint 2010, you can also build in workflows and reuse it, which you can't do before. So for example, let's say you build a project management template and you build a, let's say, a change control system. And part of the change control system, there's some automation that's going on. You can say, okay, if somebody enters this change request, ping the PM via text or email. If the PM doesn't respond, ping the PM again. If the PM responds and whatever decision the PM makes, then ping the program manager. So you can automate all that. You can do that in the prior version of SharePoint, but you cannot templatize the automation part, the workflow. In 2010, you certainly can. Mike, do users need admin rights to create templates? The answer is no. With 2010, it's very, very similar to the permission settings in the prior version of SharePoint. There's a little tweaking, and I just want to raise one point here. For example, in SharePoint 2010, the way they define it now by default is, for example, contributors or regular users out of the box cannot create their own subsites, which I think is a good thing. In the prior version, they could do it, and a lot of times they don't know what they're doing, and they start, creating all these unnecessary sites. But to answer your question, Mike, they don't need admin rights to create their own sites and create their own site templates. Colleen, is there better integration in SharePoint 2010 with Outlook's Meeting Maker? I'm not sure what you mean by integration, but one thing I can say is it's still very, very similar to the prior version of SharePoint 2007 in how it interacts with Outlook 2007. Okay, in 2007, we have to manually add attendees instead of it getting populated from Outlook Meeting Maker responses. Yes, it's still, I think it's still the same. I haven't tried it yet, but I believe it's still the same. Adam, how can you access all this on the go from your iPhone, BlackBerry, iPod, Android? Absolutely. So make sure you watch that screencast I talked about, but if you have your SharePoint environment certainly set up in a way that's open publicly, you can use all these mobile devices. And the beauty with 2010 is SharePoint Mobile, which I didn't talk about, is vastly enhanced. So go and look at my blog about iPhone. When mobile devices access SharePoint 2010, it knows it's a mobile device, and it's going to render the mobile optimized version of the site. And it's much, much better than the prior version of SharePoint 2007. For example, if you're familiar with the prior version of SharePoint 2007 Mobile Edition, is in the prior version, it's so hard to allow your custom list to show up in the mobile version. In 2010, it's straightforward. You can create views on the fly with your mobile version. So to answer your question, Adam, is you can certainly access it as long as your 2010 environment is accessible from the Internet. Adam, why can't those sections be hidden for the public view, the government reporting era? You can certainly hide it, but part of the reporting requirement is the public has to see how certain things are being done or being spent. So that's why it's available. But you can hide whatever you want based on permissions. Will all the features of 2010 be compatible with Office 2007? Sid, I'm not sure what you mean by compatible, but for example, most of the features like what I showed you, like the calendar integration, saving Word files on document library, it's compatible. But one thing that's not compatible, for example, if you're using SharePoint Designer 2007, you cannot use it to access a SharePoint 2010 site or edit a SharePoint 2010 site. So I'm not sure which specifics you're thinking of, but mostly they are compatible. Paul, can we share checkout, check-in files other than Microsoft products? Absolutely. It doesn't have to be a Microsoft Office document. I've worked with clients. Well, one common thing is things like PDF, right? Or I've worked with clients where they put CAD documents. So you can certainly work with those type of files as well. Lorette, is 2003 to 2010 migration possible, or is 2003 obsolete? I'm sure anything in this world is possible. But kidding aside, I haven't seen any documentation out there on migrating 2003 directly to 2010. Now, what I have seen is I've seen folks migrate 2003 to 2007 and 2007 to 2010. Is it obsolete? I mean, you know, it depends. I see organizations still using Windows 95, so if it meets your organizational needs, then I think that's fine. Let's see. Is there an ability out of the box of 2010 to send, copy, auto-populate child site calendars with calendar entries from the parent site? In 2010, there's new calendar capabilities. I haven't tried what you're saying, but there's more calendar capabilities. So, for example, you can specify if a single calendar is interacting with a lot of other calendars. But I haven't tried specifically what you're talking about. I can certainly do it in one of my blog posts, but that's a great question. But one thing I can say, though, that the calendaring capability out of the box is vastly improved in 2010. Can you embed public calendars to your online website like in Google Calendar? Absolutely. So things like Google Calendar or other public repositories, you can consume information various ways through RSS or web services, so you can take those feed and make SharePoint consume it, or vice versa. Anything in SharePoint has an RSS feed. So you can take the RSS feed from SharePoint and make it available, as long as it's accessible from the public, make it available through other platforms. So let's say you have iGoogle and you want to see your SharePoint show up, SharePoint calendar show up in your iGoogle little widget there. As long as you can consume the RSS, you're good to go. Can WinXP 32-bit users use SP 2010? Absolutely. So from a user perspective, you know, Windows XP 32-bit, that's fine. But from a hosting server perspective, the machine you use to install SharePoint 2010 on has to be 64-bit, has to have Windows 2008 server, 64-bit, et cetera, et cetera. You can look at all the requirements online. Any other questions? Did I miss anything, Catherine?
Yeah, Dux, we have one that they're coming in. Here, there's one from Brian. He's asking any recommendations for securing SharePoint 2010, and he's specifically looking for references.
One thing that, again, the word securing is quite vague from my understanding. So let me explain one thing. So if you're talking about securing in terms of encrypting information, realize that SharePoint 2010 uses a lot of industry standard technologies, web technologies. So if you want to encrypt data, for example, use SSL. So you go and configure SSL on the web server, HTTPS, information is encrypted. It's quote-unquote secure. Now, if you're talking about securing where you don't want anybody to see information if they're not supposed to, or you want people to log in and not the public see it, that's all out of the box. That's through managing SharePoint users and managing the appropriate permission set. And you can define, and it's quite powerful, there's a lot of stuff you could do in there. You can define based on who this person is, what group they work with, what group they don't work with, what they can see, they can't see, what they can touch, cannot touch, a lot of good stuff. I have resources on my blog. Just go to my blog. I have this whole post on SharePoint security, user security, and SharePoint user management. So I hope that answers your question around security. How about high availability? So Jerry is asking. Again, it supports it. So it depends on how you set up the infrastructure. So let me give you an example. There's a lot of public-facing sites right now that's in SharePoint 2007. They'll soon be SharePoint 2010. For example, HawaiianAir.com. I mean, it's an airline site. I'm sure there's high traffic in there. Recovery.gov. Recovery.gov, for those not familiar with it, that's the main federal stimulus tracking site. That whole thing's running on SharePoint. You talk about high availability. The recent Vancouver, is it Vancouver? Is it Vancouver Olympics, Catherine?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, the Vancouver Olympics. No, I wasn't there. I was somewhere else. But sorry, friends from Canada. I want to make sure I don't make up a Canadian city. But that whole site, that whole thing is on SharePoint 2010. Check that site out. It's still there. So you talk about high availability. So the point is, what are you trying to do with SharePoint 2010? What business problems are you trying to solve? It's capable of leveraging existing technology, existing hardware to make it highly, highly available. Will you hide our email addresses on your feedback page? Yes, I will. It's not going to show up. Yep. Tim. Oh, I'm sorry. Will you hide? That's a great point. Let me check. After this session, I'll check that. Thank you for bringing that up, but I can take care of that. What are licensing requirements for Office? Do I need to buy a project license for every user, even if they only use SharePoint once or twice a quarter? No, of course not. So if I understand you correctly, Tim, you're from Atlanta, right? I think we've met before. But let's say I'm a project manager, I'm using Microsoft Project, and I want it to, let me think about this. I want my project-related information to show up in SharePoint, but for now, we don't want to invest in the full SharePoint Server 2010. How would licensing work? Well, maybe to start off, you can use SharePoint Foundation. SharePoint Foundation is out of the box. When I say out of the box, meaning you could use it with Windows Server 2008. You can download it, but the Project 2010, SharePoint 2010 integration will still work, so you don't have to purchase extra licenses for SharePoint Server. Hopefully that was your question. Okay, so we've got one more question here I'm going to take. Is there a SharePoint compatibility function to share with clients that don't have SharePoint? Mike, the good news is everybody can use SharePoint as long as your organization, think of it this way. The example I showed earlier, like the thing I did with Safari, my SharePoint server is actually sitting in my office right now in Northern Virginia. I'm here in New York City with a Mac laptop. So I don't have SharePoint server running on my machine right here. I'm accessing it elsewhere. So I don't know if this addresses your question, but the same thing, if you have a SharePoint environment, be it you put it up yourself on your own or you procure hosted solutions out there, anybody can take advantage of it.
I think that's it, Dux.
Good.
Oh, well, there is one more question.
We use business productivity online. Yes, BPOS with SharePoint 2007 with Microsoft changes. Yes. BPOS is the hosted solution by Microsoft for SharePoint 2010. So let's say you're not ready to invest in the infrastructure, the software. It's really pay per user per month type of service. Yeah, it's called BPOS, Business Productivity Online. So you can go to Microsoft.com/online. Yes, they will be 2010 JMF.
Okay, great webcast. Thank you, Dux. I wish don't repeat this, but I wished we used SharePoint here. So thank you so much for doing this, and I want to thank everyone else who joined us today. And I hope you'll present another great webcast again soon.
Absolutely, be happy to. Thanks again, everybody, for joining. And
okay.
Yeah, stop by my blog, and you'll find a lot of good stuff. Take care.
All right, thanks everyone. Bye-bye.